The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary, who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord. This is the gospel that I always dread preaching on, because I don't think I have ever given a homily on this gospel where somebody didn't come up and criticize me for being sexist and not understanding the role of women and how much burden is placed on them and so on and so forth. And, well, it's sometimes difficult for a celibate male to speak credibly on this gospel. Maybe one of you should come up. There are a couple of things, however, I would like to point out. One of which is, we know of Martha and Mary from other parts of the Gospels. And one of the things that we know about them was that the two had a household in a suburb of Jerusalem, a wealthy suburb. They were probably fairly well-to-do people with their brother Lazarus. It is not really known if any of them were married, but it's likely at least one or two of them were, most likely Lazarus, which meant that there was a very large household. It wasn't just Mary and Martha together in the house welcoming Jesus as their dinner guest. Jesus was traveling on his way to Jerusalem with a large retinue of disciples. So the hospitality of Mary and Martha, and presumably of Lazarus, had to extend to a fairly large number of people. What that meant is they probably had a fairly good number of townspeople, as well as servants and friends, to help them out. It wasn't just Martha in the kitchen and Mary in the living room sitting at Jesus' feet, and Jesus was talking to her, excluding Martha. It was rather a much larger scene of hospitality. And what Jesus is getting at here, apart from any other consideration, is the question, where does true hospitality lie? Does hospitality mean making everything right for your guests, having the perfect dinner, having everything in order? Or does hospitality mean welcoming your guest into your life, into your heart? And the way that Luke tells it, there is it's just a very simple story that leaves aside all of the other elements, just to say, where really is true hospitality? Is it in doing things for your guest, or is it in receiving your guest and honoring your guest by paying attention to the guest. I can remember a couple of instances where I was invited to dinner with people, and one instance stands in my mind where the lady of the house welcomed me and then told me, I asked if I could help her in the kitchen. She said no. So she made me sit in the living room while she left me by myself to fix a dinner. And that always comes to my mind when I hear this gospel. Because the real question is, do you concentrate on the stuff that you want to do for your guest? Or do you really concentrate on the guest himself or herself? And I think that is what Jesus is driving at here. The whole Gospel of St. Luke is about hospitality, especially mealtime hospitality, and the hospitality of God, the way that God receives us as we are, and then in sharing himself with us, transforms us. Clearly, Mary was ready to be transformed. Martha, hopefully, as a result of Jesus' invitation here, was ready to be transformed too. But the story doesn't go that far. Maybe Martha said, oh yeah, you're the one who's important, not all of these details. So maybe today we can ask ourselves, do we really receive Jesus himself in the person of those around us who are in some kind of need? Or do we seek to do for them what we want and treat them the way that we think is hospitality?